She's the one who started this whole thing. She makes it sound like she was victimized. Being there gave her an ego boost. Oh.
In the traditional Hollywood hierarchy, a Met Gala invitation is more than just a social event. It's a formal certification of A-list liquidity. It's the industry's way of declaring that your personal brand is a high-value asset to the room. But in 2026, for Blake Lively, that ticket looked less like a reward and more like a desperate transaction. A bombshell report currently tearing through the media alleges that Lively was forced to fork over a $100,000 entrance fee just to secure her spot on those iconic stairs. Now, let's be clear. In the world of high-stakes reputation management, the raw truth of a rumor is often secondary to its believability. 5 years ago, the public would have laughed this off as cheap tabloid fiction. Today, it is being accepted as the logical closing statement for a brand suffering from a severe prestige deficit. When a star loses the benefit of the doubt, every PR move is viewed through a lens of skepticism. That $100,000 figure isn't the cause of Blake's downfall. It's the invoice for it. It marks the exact moment the world stopped seeing her as a guest of honor and started seeing her as a client, one who is desperately trying to buy back the cultural relevance she traded away through a series of catastrophic strategic blunders. From the scorched earth legal tactics used against Justin Baldoni to the mean girl behavior patterns being retroactively spotted in every old interview she's ever given, the structural integrity of the Lively Reynolds empire is facing a total system failure. The question we have to ask is, when did Hollywood's sweetheart become such a high-risk liability that even the charm of Ryan Reynolds couldn't underwrite the debt? Before we audit the deeper layers of this brand bankruptcy, hit the like and subscribe buttons so you don't miss our exclusive deep dives into the Hollywood power game. Now, let's unmask the sanitized image to find the truth her PR team tried to hide and discover why the world finally stopped buying what Blake Lively was selling. To understand why the public was so ready to believe Blake had to buy her way back into the room, we have to look at the first major crack in the foundation. A lawsuit where she didn't just lose a co-star, she lost the industry's respect. For years, Blake Lively's brand was a blue-chip stock in the Hollywood attention economy. She was the quintessential golden girl, an actress who managed to leverage the escapist fantasy of Gossip Girl into a real-world empire of curated perfection. Her portfolio was flawless: a recurring seat at the head of the Met Gala table, a friendship with the industry's most powerful gatekeeper, Taylor Swift, and a marriage to Ryan Reynolds that functioned as a billion-dollar PR fortress. For over a decade, Blake didn't just attend the Met Gala. She was the Met Gala. We all remember the 2022 reversible Versace gown, a moment so calculated and grand that it felt like a coronation. Back then, she was the queen of the stairs, a woman whose social capital was so vast that her presence was considered a gift to the event, not a privilege granted to her. But the danger of building a brand on effortless perfection is that it leaves zero margin for error. In the eyes of the public, Blake wasn't just a talented actress. She was an untouchable archetype of the cool, beautiful girl who had it all without trying. This was her greatest asset, but as we're seeing now, it became her most expensive liability. The cracks began to show when the effortless mask slipped, revealing a meticulously managed machine that was far more corporate and far more territorial than the public was led to believe. The contrast between the Blake Lively of 2022 and the Blake Lively of 2026 is quite frankly a masterclass in brand dilution. In her prime, she was the girl who could do no wrong. Today, she is the girl who can't seem to do anything right. The shift from summoned icon to paying customer reflects a brutal reality in the Hollywood hierarchy. Once the sweetheart narrative expires, the bill comes due. The public's willingness to believe she spent six figures on a ticket isn't just a reaction to a rumor. It's a reaction to the realization that her Golden Girl status was a loan that she can no longer afford to repay. To understand how this blue-chip brand went into a tailspin, we have to analyze the specific moment the mask didn't just slip, but was ripped off. It wasn't a fashion faux pas or a bad interview. It was a scorched earth campaign against a co-star that proved Blake wasn't just playing a mean girl on screen. She was running the playbook in real life. The specific catalyst for this shift was a case study in how to lose a narrative while trying to dominate it. For years, the mean girl whispers were treated as outliers, glitches in an otherwise perfect system. We saw the uncomfortable archival footage, like the now infamous 2016 interview where she responded to a journalist's congratulations on her pregnancy with a cold, sarcastic, "Congrats on your little bump." At the time, her PR machine was powerful enough to frame these moments as dry humor or misunderstood wit. But in the high-frequency environment of 2026, the public is no longer accepting quirky as a valid excuse for hostility. The mean girl pattern moved from a whisper to a roar during the fallout of her recent professional collaborations. What we witnessed wasn't just a creative difference, it was a behavioral audit. Insiders began describing a territorial approach to fame, a need to not only be the star, but to curate the entire environment to serve her personal aesthetic, often at the expense of her peers. This psychological need for total control is the ultimate brand killer. When the effortless sweetheart is revealed to be a rigid controller, the authenticity of the brand evaporates. This tension reached its terminal velocity on the stairs of the 2026 Met Gala. In a moment caught by multiple phone cameras, Blake appeared to sharply rebuke a handler who was struggling to manage the sheer volume of her dress. In isolation, it's a 5-second clip. In the context of a prestige deficit, it's a smoking gun. To the public, it looked like the classic diva move, berating a service worker while demanding the center of the frame. It confirmed a suspicion that had been building for years, that Blake Lively doesn't just inhabit a space, she colonizes it. This isn't just about bad manners, it's about the failure of a long-term PR strategy. Blake Lively's greatest mistake was assuming that her social capital was infinite. She acted as if she was too big to fail, treating journalists, co-stars, and staff as supporting characters in her own story. But Hollywood is an ecosystem of gatekeepers, and once you alienate enough of them, the system begins to reject you. The mask didn't just slip, it was stripped away by the very people who used to protect it. But the mean girl optics were just the smoke. The real fire was a multi-million-dollar legal war that was supposed to be Blake's ultimate victory. Instead, it became a forensic autopsy of her character, involving a $300 million demand and a husband who was forced to realize that his wife's vendetta was about to burn down both of their careers. The litigation against Justin Baldoni was designed to be Blake Lively's ultimate act of narrative control, a legal strike intended to silence the bully rumors once and for all. She didn't just enter the courtroom. She entered with a staggering $300 million demand. It was a figure so aggressive, it signaled an intent to not just win, but to financially and socially liquidate her opponent. In her mind, this was a slam dunk victory that would provide both a massive payday and a total vindication of her character. But in the world of high-stakes litigation, discovery is where sanitized images go to die. As the legal process unzipped the private communications of the lively Reynolds camp, the public didn't see a victim. They saw a corporate machine at war. Reports indicate that the discovery phase unearthed a trail of emails and text messages that were nothing short of a PR nightmare. We're talking about high-level coordination with industry heavyweights, allegedly discussing how to effectively flush Baldoni out of Hollywood. It wasn't just about a film set anymore. It was about the weaponization of A-list influence. This is where a reputation auditor looks at the balance sheet and sees a catastrophic liability. Ryan Reynolds, the architect of his own hyper-calculated brand, reportedly saw the writing on the wall first. He realized that the more Blake fought to prove she wasn't a bully, the more the legal evidence confirmed the opposite. The pressure from Ryan and their legal counsel wasn't just advice, it was an intervention. They had to sit her down and explain that her case was disintegrating. 10 of her most critical allegations had been tossed out, and the most damaging claims, those involving harassment, were stripped from the docket. The ultimate victory had turned into a desperate retreat. The final settlement was the ultimate humiliation. No $300 million, no public apology, and a joint statement about mutual respect that fooled absolutely no one. Blake spent millions in legal fees, only to confirm the very narrative she was trying to kill. She didn't just lose the case, she lost her standing in the industry. But the fallout didn't stop at Blake's doorstep. By tethering his brand so closely to hers, Ryan Reynolds soon realized that his wife's prestige deficit was contagious. And in Hollywood, when your personal drama starts costing the studio's money, even a superhero like Deadpool finds himself on the chopping block. The cold mathematical reality of Hollywood is that every marriage between two A-listers is essentially a joint venture. And when one partner's brand enters a state of hyperinflation, the other is forced to absorb the debt. Ryan Reynolds has spent the last decade perfecting the affable architect persona, a man who is as much a marketing genius as he is a movie star. But by tethering his reputation so tightly to Blake's Golden Girl image, he inadvertently created a single point of failure. When the public's prestige deficit regarding Blake hit critical levels, the contagion didn't just touch Ryan, it began to devalue his entire portfolio. The industry started to view him not as the charming fixer, but as the silent enabler, or worse, a co-conspirator in the very power plays that were alienating the audience. The most damaging evidence didn't come from a tabloid, but from the discovery phase of the legal war. The leaked communications reportedly showed Ryan, Blake, and even industry staples like Matt Damon and his wife strategizing on how to effectively cancel a co-star. For Ryan, whose brand relies on being the nice guy in the room, seeing his name attached to a scorched earth campaign was a catastrophic breach of trust with his fan base. This wasn't just a husband supporting his wife. To the public, it looked like a coordinated hit by a Hollywood cabal. The fallout was immediate. Sources within the studios began whispering that Ryan was becoming box office poison, a liability whose personal drama was starting to overshadow the multi-billion-dollar franchises he fronted. This brings us to the internal crisis at Marvel and Disney. While Deadpool was built on Ryan's specific brand of irreverence, the lively Reynolds baggage has become a heavy weight for a studio that prioritizes mass market appeal. Reports suggest that executives are already discussing a strategic pivot, reducing Ryan's on-screen presence in future installments, or fast-tracking a reboot with younger, cleaner talent like Tom Holland to distance the franchise from the drama. Behind closed doors, the lively Reynolds marriage has transitioned from a fairy tale to a permanent crisis management meeting. Ryan, once the psycho arsonist for his wife's vendettas, has been forced into the role of the exhausted fixer, pleading for a settlement that Blake was too proud to accept until it was too late. The damage is no longer theoretical, it's structural. But if Ryan was looking for a sign that the brand reset was working, the 2026 Met Gala provided a brutal reality check. Because when Blake Lively stepped onto those stairs, alone, desperate, and reportedly 6 figures poorer, it wasn't just a fashion moment. It was a public execution of the power couple myth, proving that in Hollywood, when the prestige runs out, even the biggest stars are left to pay the bill in full view of the world. The 2026 Met Gala was supposed to be the Great Reset, a calculated attempt by the lively Reynolds machine to reclaim the narrative through sheer, undeniable glamour. Instead, it functioned as a public audit of a social bankruptcy. Stepping out of that car alone, without the shielding presence of Ryan Reynolds, sent a clinical shockwave through the press line. The power couple armor was gone, leaving Blake to navigate the most scrutinized stairs in the world without her primary brand underwriter. It was the visual equivalent of a blue-chip company showing up to an earnings call with a vacated CEO chair. As she ascended, her choice of attire served as a masterclass in territorial desperation. The dress was excessively, almost aggressively large, a mountain of fabric that felt less like a fashion statement and more like an attempt to physically colonize a space she no longer occupied culturally. In the industry, we call this occupying the frame to hide the deficit. She was taking up room because she was losing ground. But the most damning evidence of her prestige deficit didn't come from the dress, it came from her conduct. Captured in agonizing high definition was a moment where Blake sharply rebuked a handler, the very person tasked with managing her image in real time. For a reputation auditor, this is a structural red flag. It confirmed that the scorched earth patterns seen in the Baldoni lawsuit weren't a glitch. They were the system. Even with her career on the line, The mask of the effortless sweetheart couldn't hold. The social isolation inside the event was even more telling. In an ecosystem where every seating chart is a battlefield of hierarchy, Blake was effectively marooned. The A-list inner circle, the gatekeepers she once led, seemed to have moved into a state of strategic divestment. There were no playful selfies with the new guard, no viral moments with old allies. She was a woman inhabiting a space she used to own, now reduced to a paying customer whose presence was tolerated only as long as the check cleared. The Met Gala, once her annual coronation, had transformed into her social exile. The $100,000 rumor didn't just feel believable. It felt like the only logical explanation for why someone so culturally insolvent was still allowed in the building. But as the lights dimmed on the Met stairs, the real tragedy was waiting for her at home. Because the Mean Girl tag and the six-figure ticket were just the beginning. The audit was moving into its final, most brutal stage, the total liquidation of the lively Reynolds empire, leaving us to wonder if there's anything left to save when the cameras finally stop clicking. The final audit of the lively Reynolds empire reveals a hard truth. In the high-stakes economy of Hollywood, you can survive a scandal, but you cannot survive being unmasked as a liability. Blake Lively wasn't downed by a single rumor or a $100,000 ticket. She is paying the price for a long-term pattern of arrogance, overcalculation, and a fundamental lack of social awareness that finally reached its breaking point. For years, she relied on the Golden Girl archetype to shield her from criticism, but when you spend your social capital on scorched earth, legal vendettas, and mean girl optics, the bank eventually runs dry. Unlike other celebrities who successfully navigate a crisis by leaning into vulnerability or public sympathy, Blake lost the one thing a star cannot function without: the right to be doubted. When the public stops giving you the benefit of the doubt, your brand enters a state of total liquidation. The Met Gala rumor became a global headline not because it was verified, but because it felt like the only logical outcome for a woman who had alienated her peers and lost her seat at the table. It wasn't a reset. It was a public memorial for her cultural relevance. The tragedy of the lively Reynolds collapse is that it wasn't just a personal failure, it was a systemic one. By tethering their identities so closely, Blake's prestige deficit became a contagion that Ryan Reynolds could no longer afford to underwrite. As the studios moved to distance their multi-billion-dollar franchises from the fallout, and the power couple myth dissolves into strategic decoupling, we are left with the image of a woman standing alone on those iconic stairs, draped in expensive fabric, but socially insolvent. The 2026 Met Gala wasn't the peak of her downfall. It was simply the moment the world stopped looking for the Hollywood sweetheart, and finally saw the architect of her own crisis. In the end, Blake Lively's story serves as a clinical warning to the A-list elite. Fame is a loan, prestige is the interest, and the public is the auditor who eventually comes to collect. When you lose the trust of the audience, every move you make, no matter how glamorous, is viewed as a transaction. And as Blake discovered under the blinding lights of the Met, when you lose the public's trust, even the act of buying a ticket becomes the ultimate evidence against you.